Hello and welcome to my knitting channel. It's a safe space for any questionable knitting. There is no judgment here, so you're very safe. This is part 1 of 5 for the zip sweater by PetiteKnit. So we are doing the collar and it's going to have lots of ribbing things going on and twisted stitches. So before we begin, you need to grab your yarn and your needles and your drink of choice. For the collar, you're going to need 2 4mm circular needles. One will act as the working needle and the other as the resting needle. Later on in part 2, you're going to need 5mm. I'm using this Snefnug yarn in cream, which is Danish for snowflake. It's made up of baby alpaca, cotton and merino wool. It's just as soft and chunky as it looks, but it's super light. So here you can see the recommended gauge of 12 to 16 stitches and 24 rows per 10 centimeters squared. And this is on needles ranging from 4 to 6mm. This is 50 grams per 110 meters. So for the extra small size that I'm making, I bought 9 skeins. Now we're going to be using Judy's magic cast on, which I've practiced a bajillion times before filming, so that hopefully you won't have to do it that many times. The key thing is measuring the tail. So what I do is I wrap the yarn around the needle 10 times and then I multiply that out. So for example, I need 89 stitches on each needle. So I'm going to fold it out 8 times. So in the end, I've got 90 worth of stitches. And then I do just a little bit extra, just in case of emergencies. You're going to need 2 needles. Think of one as your working needle and the other as your resting needle. My favourite one to use is the dark one, so I'm going to keep that as my working needle. So it's a bit like choosing your wand at Ollivanders. So now let's put the yarn over the resting needle with the tail end towards you. Twist the yarn once. Now the working yarn is nearer you. Make a little bird beak to go between the yarns, and then you can grab the ends and open up like a slingshot. Index finger yarn needs to go over the working needle and down in between the two. The thumb yarn goes up the middle and over the resting needle. So repeat like this. It's like a little tiny yarn dance. And make sure it's not too tight because these are your first stitches. So keep going until you've got the right amount of stitches. For the last stitch, make sure you put your yarn over the working needle, which it should be below. And if you tuck in the tail and look at the front, you're going to see that that's all nice and smooth. So that's the right side. And the wrong side is going to have those pearl stitches looking like caterpillars on the back. So yes, make sure you tuck in the tail end and turn the needles over. Pull out the resting needle to keep the stitches nice and safe. So now we can start working the next row. Very exciting stuff. For our first stitch, we need to slip over the stitch, but you have to have the yarn in front. So this will set us up nicely. Then make sure you keep a hold of the tail to keep the loop quite tight. Purl as usual. So here I'm using the Norwegian purl because I find that much easier when I'm doing rib stitches. Whoops. Okay, so let's try again. Moving on like nothing happened. here's our purl stitch. Then you're going to knit through the back loop. Let's see if I can manage that. I'm sure you can. So just continue like this in a rib until you reach the end. Now we're on the last 2 stitches. So you're going to purl and then knit normally, so not through the back loop, but just normal. So now we're going to be starting the wrong side, so we need to twist it over and make sure you're using the same needles. You're not using the resting needles. They need to sleep, so don't use them. So after all that tangle, we should be ready, but before we go on, a good tip for if you're unsure about whether you're on the right or the wrong side is that you basically have to look at the tail end. If you are knitting towards the tail end, you are on the wrong side. So that's just, and vice versa. So let's put the yarn in front, slip the stitch over, put the yarn in the back, and this time we knit normal, not through the back loop, normal, and then we purl through the back loop. Keep going until the very end. So here we are at the end of the last 2 stitches on the wrong side. You should end up just knitting those 2 stitches. And whatever you do, tighten that tail end so that your stitch is nice and even with the rest of the stitches. So keep going, do row after row after row like your life depends on it until the collar is the correct length. Ta-da! So here is the right side with the twisted stitches, and on the wrong side it just looks a little bit more boring or something. Okay, so before we move on and we fold our collar, you will need to weave in your ends. I know, the worst job of all. Make sure you weave it in on the wrong side so that it definitely can't be seen if it does come out a little bit. And then just go round and round and round up, like so. And down, swirly, 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 swirl, down. Here come the scary scissors. They're super sharp. So let's take the first 5 stitches from the resting needle. We're going to put them on this scrap yarn. And to make things fair, we're going to take the last 5 stitches and put them on a scrap yarn as well. Okay, let's flip this thing over. You want your working needle to be on top. So let's slip the first stitch like usual, and then continue the rib stitch, and you should have 5 stitches on total on your right needle, because you've saved the 5 from below on the resting needle. You need to knit the first 5. Well, rib the first 5. Then we can finally fold it over. So you have to make sure that you have the right side facing out. That's the one with a bigger gap between the knit stitches. Look for deep grooves on the outside. So now you're going to be knitting the 2 ends together, and you need to keep following the rib pattern. So the first stitch for me was a purling stitch. You go through both loops individually, then purl it together. And here comes the knitting stitch. And I'm still knitting through the back loops. Here we are on the last 2 stitches where you need to knit them together. So let's go through the back loop, knit stitch, and then the 2 tail stitches, becoming 1. So now you're free of that resting needle that you had before, and you can continue following the ribbing pattern. And there we have it. So this side, which has 5 resting stitches on each side, is the wrong side, and this side will be the right side from now on. And then we've got a tidy fluffy collar, perfectly folded together, which I think Mary Kondo would be very proud of. If it's not looking quite right, don't panic. We don't do perfect here. You can choose to frog it if you really want to. So if you found this helpful and would like to see more knitting tutorials, please consider liking and subscribing, unless of course you're completely opposed to cozy jumpers and some creativity. Next up, we'll start working on the yoke in the next video. So it's the same jumper, same fluff, but a little bit more confusing. In the meantime, keep knitting.